In the hushed early morning light, the courthouse loomed like an ancient monument, a stern reminder of traditions steeped in history and authority. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation and subtle rebellion. That day, the courtroom became a stage for an extraordinary drama that would leave an indelible mark on everyone present. The defendant, a young black teenager named Harper Freeman, was about to defy expectations in ways no one could have foreseen. They had laughed at her when she entered, dismissing her as nothing more than a confused minor unfit to grasp the gravity of the charges against her. The gallery, filled with seasoned legal professionals, skeptics and bystanders hardened by years of witnessing injustice, expected nothing more than another routine hearing. Yet Harper was not the frightened, unprepared child they presumed her to be. Instead, she had come prepared to rewrite the very rules of the courtroom. The hall was packed, its heavy wooden benches filled with murmurs and whispers that created a persistent low buzz, a sound more appropriate to a high-profile case than a standard hearing. At the center of this charged environment stood Harper, no more than 17 years old, her presence both defiant and dignified. Even as her sneakers produced faint squeaks on the cold, polished floor, each step seemed to assert her identity. Her calm expression and steady hands betrayed no trace of nervousness. She moved with a measured grace that belied the magnitude of the moment. Judge Harold Brenner, an imposing figure whose very presence commanded respect, sat behind the bench with an air of disdain. His robe, draped over his bulky frame as though thrown on in haste, did little to mask his condescension. Peering down at Harper through thick-rimmed glasses, he let his voice drip with incredulity as he pronounced, "Miss Freeman, do you even understand what you are being accused of?" His tone was not only dismissive but laced with a prejudice that revealed far more about him than about her. Without a hint of hesitation, Harper met his gaze with unwavering composure. "Yes, Your Honor, I understand," she replied, her voice clear, steady, and resolute. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence as every eye darted between the judge and the young defendant. The initial skepticism in the room, the very air of derision that had greeted her entry, slowly began to shift as whispers of admiration began to ripple through the crowd. The district attorney, a tall, impeccably groomed man with slicked-back hair and a polished demeanor, rose from his chair and strode forward with rehearsed confidence. "Your Honor, this is an open and shut case," he declared, his tone imbued with a certainty that had long defined his career. "The evidence speaks for itself. The defendant, a minor found at the scene, is in possession of materials linking her to this crime." His words, however, rang hollow in the face of Harper's calm defiance. Before the district attorney could continue, Harper's measured voice cut through the tension. "Your Honor, while the surveillance footage appears to place someone resembling me at the scene, it lacks a crucial element, a timestamp. Furthermore, the footage was retrieved from an unverified source, and without proper authentication, it should not be admitted as evidence." A statement was delivered like a precise, well-aimed rebuttal, a challenge that sent ripples of shock throughout the courtroom. Judge Brenner's eyes narrowed as he regarded her, his earlier dismissal now replaced by a grudging curiosity. "Miss Freeman, do you even realize the implications of your words?" he asked, in a tone that mingled skepticism with a faint glimmer of respect for her audacity. Instead of faltering, Harper's voice grew stronger. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied firmly. "I realize exactly what I am saying. The prosecution's case is built on assumptions rather than verifiable facts, and it is my duty to ensure that justice prevails, not the blind acceptance of flawed evidence." Her challenge struck a chord. For the first time, even the hardened faces in the gallery, the older, suited-up individuals, accustomed to unquestioning deference to authority, began to regard her with something approaching admiration. The atmosphere in the room shifted imperceptibly, the tide of opinion slowly turning in her favor. Judge Brenner's skepticism did not vanish entirely, however. He continued, his voice now a mixture of irritation and disbelief. "This isn't some after-school debate club, Miss Freeman. You are here in a courtroom and you must abide by the protocols of law." A few chuckles echoed from the gallery, yet Harper remained unfazed. With a subtle smile that hinted at an inner resolve beyond her years, she responded, "I fully intend to abide by them, Your Honor. But I also intend to ensure that the law is applied fairly and without prejudice." At that moment, the district attorney's confident demeanor began to crumble. His scripted arguments, once delivered with the assurance of someone in complete control, now stumbled in the wake of Harper's articulate objections. "Your Honor, if I may," he interjected, attempting to regain control of the proceedings. "The evidence is straightforward. The surveillance footage, despite its missing timestamp, is clear. The defendant's presence at the scene, combined with other circumstantial evidence, is undeniable." His voice wavered as he scanned the room, searching for support among his colleagues, but found only a growing murmur of dissent. Harper seized the moment with quiet authority. "With all due respect," she countered sharply, "what is irregular is not my presence here, but the prosecution's failure to provide concrete evidence that adheres to the strict standards required by law. I have prepared a preliminary review of the evidence submitted by the prosecution, and I would like to present it now." With deliberate calm, she stepped forward and placed a neatly organized stack of papers on the bench. Each document was a piece of a larger puzzle, a puzzle designed to expose the weaknesses and procedural errors in the prosecution's case. The judge leaned forward, his curiosity piqued by the detailed review Harper had compiled. As he skimmed through the documents, his furrowed brow deepened. "Where did you obtain this analysis?" he asked, his tone a blend of suspicion and reluctant admiration. "I prepared it myself, Your Honor," Harper replied succinctly, her gaze steady. "I have read extensively and have studied the law to ensure that every claim I make is substantiated by the facts." The courtroom fell silent once again as her words sank in. For a few tense minutes, time seemed to slow. The district attorney, his face flushing with frustration, tried to interject, but the judge's raised hand silenced him. "Miss Freeman," the judge said slowly, "you claim that the evidence is compromised. I ask you, for the benefit of this court, to elaborate on Exhibit B, the surveillance footage." Harper nodded and proceeded. "Exhibit B, Your Honor, is purported to show that I was present at the scene. However, it fails to provide a crucial detail, a reliable timestamp. Without knowing when exactly the footage was recorded, the sequence of events becomes impossible to verify. Moreover, the footage was obtained from a source that has not been authenticated, which directly violates the principles of proper chain of custody. In essence, this piece of evidence lacks the reliability necessary for it to be admitted in a court of law." As she spoke, the courtroom's tension grew palpable. Those in the gallery, attorneys, clerks, and curious onlookers alike, began to murmur among themselves. Even some of the more conservative members of the audience, who had come expecting a routine hearing, now leaned forward, drawn in by the force of her argument. The district attorney's next attempt to regain the upper hand came with a shift in his tone. "Your Honor, if I may," he began, but Harper interrupted him smoothly. "With all due respect, the issue here is not my right to speak, but the admissibility of the evidence. Consider Exhibit D, the so-called confession. This document was signed after hours of interrogation and, crucially, without the presence of legal counsel. Such a procedure violates the defendant's constitutional right to legal representation and renders the confession invalid." Her words, measured and precise, resonated deeply with the core values of fairness and justice. The judge's expression grew more thoughtful, and even the district attorney's confident mask began to falter. "Miss Freeman," the judge said, his tone now quieter but laden with gravity, "what is it that you are trying to accomplish here?" Harper's eyes flickered momentarily as she scanned the courtroom, a sea of faces, some skeptical and some hopeful. "I am not merely here to defend myself," she replied firmly, "but to uphold the integrity of our legal system. I stand before you not just as a defendant, but as someone who believes that the truth must prevail over assumptions and that justice must be administered fairly, regardless of one's age or background." Her declaration hung in the air like a challenge to every preconceived notion about what it meant to be young, black, and underestimating the law. The judge's eyes, now softened with a mixture of regret and respect, regarded her with a look that spoke of an internal struggle between tradition and the undeniable clarity of her arguments. After a long, suspenseful pause, the judge resumed. "Ms. Freeman, I have never encountered a case quite like this. Your arguments are compelling, and the evidence you have presented reveals significant flaws in the prosecution's case. It is now incumbent upon us to re-examine the assumptions that have long governed this courtroom." At that moment, a quiet murmur of anticipation swept through the room, as if the very foundations of the legal establishment were being questioned for the first time in decades. The district attorney, now visibly rattled, attempted one last appeal. "Your Honor, while I acknowledge that certain procedural errors have been noted, the overall evidence remains—" Before he could finish, Harper's voice rang out, steady and unwavering. "Your Honor, the overall evidence is built on inconsistencies and oversights. I have here a forensic analyst's report that outlines every discrepancy in the surveillance footage, its missing timestamp, its unverified source, and details the lapses in the chain of custody. This evidence, as it stands, is not only unreliable but inadmissible under the strict protocols that ensure our legal system functions justly." The judge took a deep breath as he considered the forensic report and the implications of her analysis. His gavel rested on the desk for several long moments before he spoke again. "It appears, Miss Freeman, that you have presented a case that challenges not only the specifics of this trial but the very principles upon which we base our evidence. I must now decide not only on your guilt or innocence, but on the validity of the procedures that have been employed in this case." A silence fell over the courtroom, an expectant, almost reverent hush, as everyone waited for his next words. Outside, the early light of day now shone through the tall windows, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch across the hall, as if to emphasize the gravity of the moment. The judge's voice, when it finally emerged, was measured and deliberate. "Given the significant issues presented with Exhibit B and Exhibit D, and in light of the clear violations of proper procedure, I am compelled to dismiss these key pieces of evidence. Without them, the case against you cannot be sustained. Miss Freeman, you are free to go." A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Some spectators applauded, while others whispered in disbelief. The district attorney's face turned a deep shade of crimson, and even Judge Brenner's own expression softened, tinged with regret for his earlier dismissiveness. For Harper, the verdict was not merely a personal triumph, but a vindication of her unwavering belief in the power of truth and due process. In the aftermath of the decision, the courtroom slowly emptied, the once intense buzz of tension giving way to a reflective silence. Harper remained seated for a moment, absorbing the enormity of what had just transpired. She knew that her case was far more than a mere legal battle. It was a statement about the need for accountability within the justice system, a call for everyone to question long-held assumptions and to demand fairness. Outside the courthouse, the scene was equally charged. Reporters whose relentless questions had gathered like storm clouds rushed to her side. A microphone was thrust in her direction, and one reporter demanded, "Miss Freeman, can you tell us how you managed to pull off such an extraordinary feat in the courtroom today? What is your secret?" Harper paused for a moment, her eyes scanning the gathered crowd, a diverse mix of supporters, skeptics, and curious onlookers. With a small, measured smile, she responded, "There is no secret. The law is meant to serve everyone, not just those who fit a certain mold. Today's ruling is not only about clearing my name, it is about proving that intelligence, determination, and the unwavering pursuit of truth know no age, no boundaries." Her words resonated deeply, sparking conversations far beyond the courthouse walls. Over the following days and weeks, Harper Freeman's case became a symbol of hope and change. Legal experts debated the implications of her arguments, community leaders hailed her as a trailblazer, and many who had long felt marginalized found new strength in her example. Within the legal community, her success sparked an introspection that had been long overdue. Bar associations and legal reform advocates began to question outdated protocols and systemic biases that had for too long silenced voices like hers. Seminars were held, and discussions ensued about how the system could be reformed to ensure that every individual, no matter how young or unconventional, could have their day in court, judged solely on the merits of their argument and the strength of the evidence presented. In one particularly memorable follow-up meeting at a local community center, Harper was invited to speak to a group of aspiring young lawyers and activists. The room was filled with bright, eager faces, each one reflecting hope and a desire for change. Standing before them, Harper spoke not just of her case, but of the broader struggle for justice. "I stand before you as proof that our voices matter," she declared passionately. "We must continue to challenge every assumption that holds us back. The law is not an impenetrable fortress built solely for the privileged few. It is a tool for fairness, for accountability, and for progress." Her words ignited a spark in the audience, inspiring many to pursue careers in law and activism, determined to carry forward the mantle of reform. News outlets soon picked up on the story of the young attorney who had turned the courtroom on its head. Editorials, opinion pieces, and in-depth interviews praised her for her intelligence and fortitude, while legal scholars debated the ramifications of her success on future cases. In one notable televised debate, a panel of esteemed jurists discussed how Harper's approach had forced the legal community to rethink long-standing practices. "What Harper Freeman has shown us," one panelist stated, "is that the law is a living entity, ever-evolving, capable of growth, and in desperate need of voices that challenge its shortcomings." Another jurist added, "Her case highlights the essential need for every courtroom to be a place where truth prevails over prejudice, where every piece of evidence is scrutinized without bias, regardless of who presents it." Even within the courtroom where it had all unfolded, changes began to take shape. Judge Brenner, known for his rigid adherence to tradition, found himself reflecting deeply on his own conduct. In subsequent cases, he made a conscious effort to temper his skepticism with greater openness to arguments from unexpected sources. While the case of Harper Freeman would always remain a watershed moment in his career, it also served as a catalyst for his personal transformation, an evolution from rigid authority to a more balanced, thoughtful arbiter of justice. For Harper herself, the journey was far from over. While the dismissal of the charges was a momentous victory, it was only the beginning of a much larger battle against systemic inequities. Determined to use her newfound platform to advocate for change, she began working closely with legal reform groups and civil rights organizations. Together, they embarked on campaigns to educate young people about their rights and to promote transparency and accountability within the justice system. Over time, Harper's story evolved into something much larger than a single courtroom victory. It became a symbol of the power of resilience, a rallying cry for those who had long felt voiceless in the corridors of power. Community centers organized legal literacy workshops inspired by her example, and young people across the nation began to see in her a reflection of their own potential, a reminder that no matter the obstacles, the pursuit of truth and justice was always within reach. As months turned into years, Harper continued to build on her legacy. She went on to mentor aspiring attorneys, sharing her experiences and the lessons learned from that fateful day in court. Her unwavering commitment to justice inspired countless others to challenge the status quo and to believe in the transformative power of knowledge. In interviews and public appearances, she often reiterated the message that had carried her through the darkest moments of the trial: never let anyone define your worth or limit your potential. The law is not an exclusive club. It belongs to every one of us. In a candid conversation with a seasoned journalist during a nationally televised interview, Harper reflected on the journey that had taken her from the courtroom to becoming a voice for change. "I was once seen as just a kid, someone who wasn't taken seriously," she admitted, "but I learned that the power of truth and justice is not measured by age or experience. It is measured by the willingness to stand up, to speak out, and to demand that every action taken in the name of the law is done with integrity and fairness. That is the true measure of our society." Her words resonated deeply with viewers across the nation. Social media buzzed with messages of support, and countless individuals shared their own stories of overcoming obstacles, inspired by Harper's bold defiance of convention. Forums, online groups, and community discussions sprang up, all echoing the same message, that every person has the right and the responsibility to challenge injustice and to fight for a system that works for all. The impact of that historic courtroom day would be felt for generations. Law schools began incorporating Harper's case into their curricula as a prime example of how determination and an unwavering commitment to truth could reshape legal discourse. Conferences and symposiums were held to explore the implications of her arguments, and legal journals published detailed analyses of the case, noting its potential to usher in a new era of judicial reform. In time, the story of Harper Freeman became more than a singular narrative. It became a movement. A movement characterized by a collective demand for a justice system that recognizes the inherent worth and potential of every individual, regardless of age, race, or background. Through her continued advocacy and relentless pursuit of reform, Harper challenged every member of society to examine their own biases and to strive for a system where justice was not a privilege, but a universal right. The ripple effects of her triumph reached far beyond the courthouse. In communities across the country, local leaders began to re-examine policies and practices that had long perpetuated inequality. Grassroots organizations emerged, dedicated to legal education and reform, their work a testament to the idea that change begins with the courage to question, to learn, and to act. In towns and cities where voices had once been silenced by tradition, the call for justice grew louder, a call that resonated with every individual who believed in the power of fairness and equality. As the years passed, Harper Freeman's journey continued to unfold like a beacon of hope in a complex and often unjust world. Her story, marked by moments of defiant courage in the face of overwhelming odds, became a narrative not of a single courtroom victory, but of an ongoing struggle for a better, more inclusive legal system. It was a reminder that true progress is achieved not by the silent acquiescence of those in power, but by the relentless insistence on holding every institution accountable. Looking back on that pivotal day in the courtroom, one can see how every whispered doubt, every sneer of derision, and every dismissive remark was transformed into a powerful catalyst for change. The laughter that had greeted her arrival had given way to respectful silence, and the initial disbelief had blossomed into a collective realization that when truth is championed with conviction, even the most entrenched systems can be challenged and reformed. Today, as Harper continues her work as both an attorney and an advocate for justice, her story serves as an enduring testament to the idea that the most underestimated individuals can indeed become the catalyst for monumental change. Her legacy is not defined solely by the legal victory she achieved on that unforgettable day, but by the countless lives she has inspired to stand up, speak out, and demand that justice, true, impartial, and accessible to all, prevails. In the echoing halls of the courthouse where it all began, the memory of that transformative trial lingers like a whispered promise. A promise that no matter how deeply entrenched injustice may seem, the spirit of determination and the pursuit of truth will always find a way to break through the barriers of prejudice and indifference. And so, the story of Harper Freeman endures. A story that challenges each of us to reflect on our own assumptions, to question the status quo, and to dare to imagine a world where justice is not an elusive ideal, but a lived reality for everyone. As the courtroom lights dimmed and the echoes of gavel strikes faded into the corridors of justice, a new chapter began to unfold, not just for Harper Freeman, but for everyone who had ever felt marginalized or silenced by an indifferent system. In that moment, when the weight of centuries-old prejudices was challenged by the steady resolve of one brave soul, the spirit of change was unmistakably ignited. Outside the courthouse, beneath a sky that seemed to promise endless possibility, Harper stood quietly amidst a sea of reporters, supporters, and curious onlookers. Her expression, though calm, radiated an inner strength born of years of quiet determination and fierce belief in the power of truth. It was a strength that had carried her through the most daunting moments in a system designed to break rather than uplift her. And as she spoke to the gathering crowd, her words measured yet impassioned. She reminded everyone that justice is not a privilege reserved for the few, but a right inherent to all. Today, she declared, her voice resonating with both warmth and authority, we have witnessed that the law is not static. It is a living, breathing instrument meant to serve every person equally. The power to challenge injustice, to question long-held norms, and to demand accountability lies within each of us. I stand not only as proof of what is possible when we dare to defy expectations, but as a symbol of hope for every individual who has ever been told they were too young, too inexperienced, or too different to make a difference. Her words, echoing in the crisp air of the early evening, began to weave a tapestry of renewed belief among the crowd. Each person who listened felt the stirring of a collective resolve, a determination to reshape the institutions that had long seemed immutable. In that transformative moment, it became clear that the significance of the day transcended legal victory. It was a call to action, a reminder that every injustice can be dismantled when courage meets opportunity. In the days that followed, Harper's victory served as both a beacon and a blueprint for change. Her case was dissected in legal journals and debated in academic halls, but its true impact was felt on the streets, in community centers, and within the hearts of those who had long been ignored. Schools organized forums and workshops inspired by her example, teaching young people not just about the law, but about the importance of resilience, critical thinking, and standing up for what is right. The narrative of a young black attorney who challenged the status quo had sparked conversations that transcended the boundaries of legal discourse, reaching into the very fabric of society. Local communities rallied around her message, initiating projects to educate and empower those who had been marginalized by systemic injustice. Grassroots organizations emerged with renewed vigor, each one committed to ensuring that the lessons learned from that historic trial would pave the way for a more equitable future. In city halls and community meetings, discussions turned from despair to determination as people began to envision a system where justice was not an elusive ideal, but a tangible reality accessible to every citizen. Yet for Harper, the journey was far from over. In quiet moments of reflection, she often recalled the piercing gaze of the judge, the condescending tone of the district attorney, and the skeptical whispers of those who doubted her. But she also remembered the unexpected nods of approval, the subtle shifts in attitude, and the spark of hope in the eyes of onlookers who saw in her not just a defendant, but a harbinger of change. Each memory served as both a reminder of the battles fought and a motivation to continue the work that lay ahead. Determined to harness the momentum of her victory, Harper devoted herself to legal reform and community activism. She began collaborating with civil rights advocates, crafting proposals for systemic changes aimed at dismantling the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. Her voice, now amplified by both legal acclaim and grassroots support, resonated with the promise of a new era, one where the scales of justice were balanced not by tradition or bias, but by fairness, empathy, and the relentless pursuit of truth. In countless interviews, speeches, and written reflections, Harper emphasized that her struggle was not unique. "I stand here not as an anomaly," she would say, "but as a testament to the untapped potential that resides within each of us. Every challenge we face is an opportunity to redefine our world, to rebuild systems that have long excluded the voices of the many in favor of the few." Her words inspired not only future lawyers and activists, but also everyday citizens who began to see themselves as agents of change. The profound impact of Harper's journey was felt in every corner of the community. In local schools, art projects, and writing contests celebrated the spirit of resilience and justice. Neighborhoods organized public readings of her case notes, and murals depicting her determined face emerged on walls where hope and defiance were celebrated in vibrant colors. These creative expressions were not just tributes, they were declarations that the struggle for justice is ongoing and that every small victory contributes to a larger transformative movement. As time went by, Harper Freeman's case was studied in universities and cited in courtrooms as a pivotal moment in the evolution of legal practice and civil rights. It became a symbol, a rallying cry, for all who believed in the power of one voice to challenge a system and ignite a collective awakening. Her legacy was one of empowerment and accountability, a reminder that true progress demands constant vigilance and the courage to stand up even when the odds seemed insurmountable. In the final analysis, the true meaning of that day in court was not solely in the dismissal of charges or the procedural victories that followed. It lay in the enduring message that justice, when pursued with passion and integrity, is a force that can transform society. Harper Freeman's story, marked by bold defiance and compassionate advocacy, serves as a timeless reminder that every individual, no matter how underestimated or overlooked, holds within them the potential to change the world. And so, as the echoes of that transformative trial continue to reverberate through the halls of justice and the hearts of those who dare to dream of a better tomorrow, the legacy of Harper Freeman endures. It is a legacy of hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief that every barrier can be overcome. It challenges us all to break free from the confines of outdated norms and to embrace a future where every voice is heard, every truth is valued, and every person is empowered to pursue the promise of a just and equitable world.